Gentleman at the back.
This is more a question about the specific investigation that's going on in the UK. As I understand it, it's not based on data protection law at all. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's two interception laws.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, and that perhaps clashes with what's going on in the rest of Europe, for example, where I believe the data protection authorities are more actively involved, whereas here they're possibly not. And I just wondered on how you thought that reflected on the state of data protection laws, rights of privacy, and however else you might want to describe it in terms of the legal redress that is available to people, be they individuals or advocacy groups taking on the big players in the field. Do you think that something else needs to be there, or do you think what we've got at the moment is enough to, cause that cultural shift in the Google boardroom? It seems to be what you're after.
I'm with Alex on this one. The Information Commissioner has a lot to answer for generationally, because we're going right back to the 1980s. The Information Commissioner could be regarded simultaneously as spineless and gutless. I'm sorry, that's just... I took away the office, not the person. And that has been, unfortunately, a legacy of that office for a long time. And we know what is causing it. There are some individuals within that office who are blockages to advocacy, and you've got to be an advocate to protect people under the Data Protection Act. But there are people there who don't believe that. We have some faith that there's reform going on. In this particular case with Google, for example, there is a section 55 of the Act which is where criminal proceedings can be invoked. But to do that, you have to willfully and recklessly collect or use people's data, and that has not been established with Google. So you can't invoke section 55. But the Act is a lot stronger than the Information Commissioner's Office would have you believe. There's a lot more can be done with it, and that's one of the reasons why, actually, only about 2 months ago, the Law Society and Privacy International have partnered together to create a privacy rights centre, so we can take some of these cases forward through the courts and bypass the Information Commissioner. And that will, a bit like health and safety, that's going to help create the cultural change and change in the legal environment to protect privacy a lot more rigorously.
Okay, I'm going to take one final question. After that question's been asked and answered, Sarah, we gave you the first port of call, and I think the last word too. So the last question, gentleman at the back.
How optimistic are the panel, or indeed anybody in the audience, that if we were to revisit this subject in 10 years' time with either Google or another large company that had taken its place, that these privacy objections would have been resolved either through regulation or changing social attitudes, or a mixture of the two?
We shall go quite quickly. I'm very optimistic that in 10 years' time that will be resolved. I think that Google has been quite, if I can say so, quite shaken by what's happened. It's really taken this on board. I think no other provider would want to go down this path and have the same sort of experience. No one wants their name dragged through the press and the mud like this. I think there'll be awareness on that front. I think, too, there is a generational issue here. A lot of people who don't use the internet very often, there's a disconnect here. People who don't use the internet very often, nor want to, are people who are most concerned about their data and their image being used and abused. And I think that there'll be an equilibrium. People will behave better on the provider side, and people will have fewer concerns and be smarter about what they're putting out there on the user side. So I'm quite optimistic. Paolo?
Yeah, I share definitely the view with them, and I think in 10 years' time that would be international privacy standard. I think it would be seriously implemented privacy by design, and also the principle of accountability that is already being introduced in the new, possibly the new data protection directive. So I see the future right on this side.
Simon?
I'm not so optimistic. I think it will solve the Google-style problems because the large institutions will fall into line. But unfortunately, because they won't agree with the core principles of consent and respect for data, what's going to happen is that when we hit the new era of, let's say, the Internet of Things, RFID, nanotechnology, stuff which is, if you like, the particularization of our minds and our world, at that point, I think it's going to be anarchy. So we will solve the problem of privacy institutionally, but everybody's going to be a privacy invader, as they have now with CCTV. That's the future. Right at the moment, everybody can put up a CCTV camera, use it, do what they want with it, hidden cameras, and they all have their own justification. I think that's going to happen in so many parts of our lives in the future, and it'll be our neighbour, our shopkeeper, our uncle, or our parents will be the perpetrators.
A light note from which the panel Sarah, I want to give you the final one.
Well, I'm much more optimistic, but then I work for Google, so you'd expect me to say that. I'm with Alex, actually. I think part of the answer is people understanding their own sense of responsibility on the internet and how to protect their own personal information, but also I think, we're all figuring out how to do this, to be honest. The internet is new to all of us, and I think working out how to make the internet work for people and how to make the settings work in such a way that people feel in control of the information they have is really, we're putting a lot of effort into getting that right. And I'll end with one final story. When we launched Buzz, which I guess some of you may have heard about, our social networking chat service, which had some of the settings wrong, shall we say, we got a pretty significant amount of feedback from our users. Feedback being a generous term I'd use. Within hours of launching the service, people told us what they thought, and within 48 hours we had changed all the settings that people were upset about. I'd say before we got a single letter from any data protection authority around the world, we had fixed what was wrong with the service. And I think there's something very interesting and I hope heartening about that and the way the internet works, is that really our users' trust is all we have. That's why we're successful, because users trust us. And we work really hard to try and make sure we keep that trust. So, therefore, I'm optimistic, because I think the internet ultimately works on the basis of that trust remaining true.
Sarah, I want to thank you for coming. It's great to be able to have this discussion with Google rather than about Google. I want to thank all of you for coming. I see that our manifestos have come into good use as fans in the course of this evening. Thanks for bearing with us in the heat. The manifestos have been prepared uncharitably to Chinese takeaway menus. In that spirit, can I invite you to take them away? And can I please invite you to join with me in thanking our panellists, Simon Davies, Paolo Balboni, the absent Rob Halfman, and our half panellist, Sarah Hunter, in the usual way.